So, hi everyone, thank you for attending here at OpenOut 2025 and those who are watching online. I'm Cray. Good. I'm Cray and I'm a local Base48 Hackerspace member where I work on various open source software and hardware projects. And I decided to make this presentation because I'm hoping to make a positive progress on making open source in general more available to the general public while spreading awareness about the issue of using e-fuses for Taiwanization. More on that later in the presentation. So, I will mainly focusing on the Spatial Linux, as earlier presentation by David Heidelberg already focuses on Linux 4 and smartwatches in general, while mine will be more focused on the issues and how could we solve them as a community. But I still want to expand on my experience with Fourier Labs, Fourier FLX1. I know there is some controversy around with the open source community that I want to kind of try to explain. And later I will also do a recap of what we will be working on. Good. So, to be honest, this is a really difficult subject to make a case for, as it seems that a lot of people, when it's in terms of VR and anything extended reality in general, just have a really bad experience with this form factor. And to be fair, if you asked me a year ago, I would be in the same bandwagon, so to say. Because my earliest experience was with one of these HTC Vive headsets that I have right there. This is like earlier model. I had much older version that doesn't have much of the things solved. And as you can see on the, it doesn't have that there. It's fine. Basically, it's like a bunch of hardware that you need to set up to dedicate the room in your house. Is it working? Yeah. So, yeah, it's like that. So it's a bunch of hardware that you need to make a room in your house. And you have to set up these things called base stations so that the headset is able to know where it is in the physical space, including the controllers. And this is it could be a work for one or multiple days, depending on how complicated the setup is. And the earlier ones were very complicated for that. So the demonstration of what it's supposed to be set it up at. And you still, at the time, these were very expensive. And you had to have a high-end gaming computer to pair with it. So the whole VR headset and all the equipment with it was basically the same cost as high-end gaming computer. So you basically need double the high-end gaming computer to be able to use it, which made it very uneconomical for a lot of people. And you have to use these kinds of controllers. I have one on demonstration here. This is apparently was made by inspiring from the game Halo, from the weapon that I have on the screen right now. When you use it for a long time, it's supposed to be ergonomical for all types of hands. But for example, mine, I get really carpal tunnel and strain on my pinky finger when holding this. So it's more economical to hold it more like this, where it doesn't work. So this is one of the issues with the earlier form factors. And someone may have the idea to model it after a weapon and hold it by the non-comfortable end. So, why do I even bother you with this to begin with? This seems like a really bad form factor to use for anything productive. And to be honest, it got so much better to the point where instead of having to do the whole complicated setup, you can just look around you, and it will model the room and so that it knows where it is. It uses landmarks in your room for the tracking, and it maps all the objects in there so that when you are in the VR, you don't bump into something and get hurt, which was kind of the problem with the earlier headset. And you no longer need controllers that much because it doesn't show. Can we make? Probably not. So you no longer need controllers because it has computer vision and it has its own neural processing unit. So you can just interact with the menus using your hands or using the pinch finger to use as a cursor. Sorry, the video doesn't play. I will try to do a demonstration for those who are interested in Base48 Hackerspace stand on the OpenOut floor for those who are interested. So this kind of makes it feel like we are in the early days of the Ready Player One universe, because it doesn't feel like it's sci-fi anymore for those who saw the movie, because like we even have the alternative to the omnidirectional treadmill, so that you can just have a place in your room that doesn't take too much space, and it will just translate your movements from the real world to the virtual world. And for those who are interested, there is a VR game bar that I'm not sponsored by or anything. I just, for those who are interested, they have like a demonstration of how this technology works. It's below Velký Špalíček in the city. So I'm not here just to say it's a cool gaming console. Everyone go buy this and use it. That's like the least of my worries, to be honest. I just see a big potential in this form factor, and I don't want the open source community to miss out on this, because like I've been using mine for development, because you have basically your own office that you have multiple displays and you can pair it with a keyboard and touchpad, so that for example, when I'm in like a train or when I'm traveling somewhere, I can just put it on there, have 3 monitors, and just work on my development whenever I need to without getting distracted by anything. It's also great for movies, as I'm showing here, because true 3D movies are back and it's amazing. Like, there aren't too many titles for that, but when you find one that's actually using the 3D technology and utilizes the 2 displays in the headset, it works really great, and I recommend anyone to at least give it a try, because it's unreal experience in my humble opinion. So, this all seems like a great idea. At least to me, sounds like a great idea, but there are major issues, because otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it here. So, what are the issues? To be fair, I kinda gave up on trying to explain this to the general public. Why is security and privacy important, as people either see it as me or as paranoid, or the issues are so bad that they just don't believe me. So instead, I opted to just play a short video about a recent legal case in the United States that's covered by the IT, what's the name? By a guy on YouTube. I will just show the video later. So let me do it now if it's
Meta's
gonna work.
response was they fired the researchers and deleted the evidence.
I guess we won't get the video.
I'm the family
So
IT guy.
let me just
My
do a
dad is
summary of
cybersecurity
what's
expert
in
with
there.
30 years of experience.
It's not gonna stop playing. So basically, what happened is that there were people inside of the vendor's company who use the data gathered to basically gather as much information about you, so that they can monetize it and use it basically against you without little to no care about your well-being. He mentions the whistleblower claims that they use the information against teenagers to promote negative eating habits and similar cases. So when you use the various social media and you feel like you're doom scrolling, it's not personal character flaw. It's more like they hired one of the best researchers and neuroscientists in the world, and they are manipulating you so that you are on that platform and they can squeeze money out of you. And
Meta's response was they
not
fired
the
the
video,
researchers.
please.
Meta's response
Sorry
was they
for the
fired the researchers.
technicals. So, where is?
Meta's response was they fired the researchers and
Let me just do this. So, it's a family IT guy. I'm sorry for the technicals again. There is a QR code and a YouTube link for those who are interested in this. I just want to do like quick summary of the issue. So to make the case that security and privacy is important, because this headset is made by that company that uses a lot of personal data, and it's not, and it's using a lot of the data to basically gather. And because you are still using the headset in your own home and around, it gathers a bunch of personal information that it can then use against you. So I touched up on the issue of deviceization before, and to explain it now, deviceization is the practice that basically prevents you from using your own operating system on the VR headsets or any devices in general. Basically, I'm not blaming directly Qualcomm, even though it seems like that. Thank you. This is the thing that's called Qualcomm Fuse Programmable Read-Only Memory, or QFPROM for short, which is a concerning trend to me because what seems to be happening lately in the market, in simple terms, that there is a piece of wire inside of the chip that the vendor can break, and since it's impossible that the vendor can break inside of the chip, and once it's broken, you can no longer disable secure boot and load any other operating system. So they are basically forced to use the operating system and firmware and what their whole software infrastructure without having, even when you pay the full price for the device, which to me as an open source developer is a concerning trend because they are basically using a lot of our software infrastructure, and they are preventing the general public from being able to utilize it fully. So, to elaborate more, like when we approach the vendor and the industry in general, they just won't claim that we are trying to access their intellectual property. And well, to begin with, over 80% of the source code on the devices are out of source. It's basically GPL in some shape or form. They overly use our software infrastructure as an open source community and then claim that it's their intellectual property that we don't have access to. So I will just link some statements from the Free Software Foundation on the statement that claims that even GPL v2 should enforce that. What are you doing? Should enforce that we should have the option to load our own operating system on those devices. Is it okay? Good. I'm sorry for the technical issues. So, what can we do about this issue in general? And I'm probably not doing it justice right now too much. Basically, imagine that you buy your own device, and the device is basically a bunch of ads, bunch of preloaded malware that's constantly spying on you, or that's constantly making you use applications that you might not be interested in and can't remove. And in addition to that, it's not very well on security, so it's kind of easy for anyone else to just get access to the device and use it to spy on you right now. So what can we do about it? Me and other developers in the community made a project that we called FreeXR, which is publicly available to anyone who's interested to help us with these devices. And our ultimate goal is to open source them and make open source designs for everyone. Now, and since they kind of, even when you like approach the manufacturer of those chips, they just want us to be big companies so that we can sign a corporate NDA and get any kind of access to the chip so that we can even like compare to those devices that are available on the market. So since they are prevent us from making our own designs, we kind of have to get creative. And so that because even when you do not have root, you cannot disable all the telemetry, so the device is basically constantly spying on you. So me and others in the community were able to abuse known vulnerability that we dubbed Cheese. That's basically using a lot of other projects to implement overflow vulnerability in the Adreno kernel driver. For those who do not speak in technical terms, that's basically graphics processing driver that that has a memory that overflows, and thanks to that we are able to utilize it to get privileged access like an administrator account. And this is temporary, so it has to be reapplied on every boot. So this is, to be honest, kind of difficult for everyday user to just like open command line and do all the things so that they are able to then disable all the telemetry and spyware and just be able to use it beyond the niche gaming console that this was designed to. So we made you a nice app that you can just install on any of the VR headsets. And if there is a known vulnerability that we can use to give you root, it will take the control of the device back into your hands and disable all the spyware and everything that may be preventing you from using the hardware. We also implemented a bunch of tweaks so that additional functionality that is not even released yet, or we implement our own functionality into those devices. So, and And just to clarify, we are not black hats. This vulnerability was known to the vendor for multiple months. We even tried to contact the vendor, and they just called us cheaters, and that we like it's kind of really comical. So they call us cheaters and didn't want to cooperate with us on any other technological or security-wise issues. Yeah, and the whole headset and the software on it is basically one huge open door that has multiple vulnerabilities that no one seems to care about, and it's probably seems to be it's done that way by design. So we try to disclose this to all the developers that they might be affected by this kind of vulnerabilities, even though they are already exploited in the wild for a long time now. We just like found one and were able to publicly disclose it, and we try to do it as wide hat as we can, and even cooperated with developers who would be affected by these, and try to make their products secure and gave them free consultation and actively cooperating with them so that they are not suffering because of the security malpractice by the vendor. And so if this is something that you would like to help us with and join us, there is our GitHub account where we have an ever-growing community. We are currently across shared communities over 3,000 people because the community kind of exploded ever since like 6 months ago that we created it. Our ultimate goal, as I said before, is standalone XR headset and maintain an ecosystem when it can thrive, as the ecosystem right now is not too great either, but I won't go into details in this presentation about that. We already made the software infrastructure for those headsets available. So we have the mainline implemented by Alicia Michalska. Thanks her a lot for that, who was able to get Lynx R1 from the company that's more open source friendly, but they are not as economically available to the general public, and they have limited supply of those VR headsets for now, which hopefully is going to change in the near future. And the VR headset shares the technological infrastructure with those headsets that are available, and since the vendor is subsidizing these headsets, they are very economical to get for anyone. Like I got this one for 3,000 Czech crowns, which is less than 200 euros. And the other models are even less for that. Just for some reason, the more light version of this headset is the most expensive one from all those presented. So we even have the infrastructure on the back end. There is an OpenXR standard so that there is solved the market fragmentation, which wasn't solved by us, it was solved by the Kronos group, so that you don't, as a developer, you don't have to use multiple different libraries to do the same thing. There is like a standardized way to do rendering, and it makes everything just run more smoother, more stable, and you don't have the issue of trying to make one thing work for multiple different devices, because you made one thing and it works everywhere. We also developed our own user interface, because you can just put GNOME or KDE on it, because it's a whole different form factor, a whole different way of interfacing with the user interface. So we cooperate with Stardust XR, who make the fully open source user interface that's purposely built for these spatial computing in general. And I have some demonstration how it looks like. There is also working pass-through. You have working hand tracking, so you don't need controllers as well to use this. And it's made to be very modular and very adjustable for anything you need. So it's great infrastructure to build any kind of user interface you need to implement in that. So now we move to the recap of what can be of the spatial Linux, and I will do some demonstration of the issues later. So to recap, we have all the software we need to make this thing work on open source software without any limitations. Well, there are some limitations with firmware for the cameras, but that can be managed. And we have the infrastructure to make it painless to use for anyone. And we have the infrastructure to do the UI and everything that's needed to make this form factor to work painlessly. But we still don't have good hardware, because, as I mentioned before, this is using Qualcomm's QFPROM implementation. So even when the vendor screws up everything security-wise on the device, we still are unable to load our own operating system because there is a physical damage of the chip that's preventing us. That's a control damage that's done during manufacturing that's preventing us to load any other operating system or any other kind of software infrastructure without an evolved process like evolved glitching that seems to work well, but there is a risk of hardware damage that doesn't make it very easily available for everyone. And there is also the problem that the whole device is kind of made to be very painful to repair and disassemble. Like there are over 51 screws, and they are all different sizes. They are not magnetic. It's a real pain disassembling this in general. And there are also major problem hardware-wise. As you can see, there is this USB-C on a moving swivel that if you use it too long, there is a part that should have been made with some kind of infill like carbon fiber or glass fiber so that it doesn't break and doesn't suffer from fatigue. And what happens is that, if I can show it here easily, as the longer you use it, the more stress you induce on this part and it breaks prematurely. So this is very fragile and I could just like break it easily like this because the part on there does not really have the strength to withstand long term, and it seems to be designed so that it fails prematurely and you are forced to buy the new headset. We have a solution for this, which is basically that we reverse engineer the part and are going to make it publicly available for everyone to use, to be able to manufacture it in any available hackerspace around the world. You still need to disassemble the headset to fix that issue, but it's not that matter of we are trying to make it so that there are guides so that people are able to do it painlessly and can put it back together without causing additional damage, because there are things like flex connectors that go over things that if you put in the wrong way, that's kind of tempting you to put it in the wrong way, you will just break the sensors, and the sensors are very expensive to repair because they are not publicly available as repair units. And so that's for the spatial Linux kind of part. If there are any questions, I will take them now. Good. So now I will move to the Linux phones and smartwatches, which is going to be more evolved. Basically, I will refer to the presentation by David Heidelberg. I'm sorry for mispronouncing that name. For Linux phones and smartwatches in general on OpenOut today. And I will just expand on basically the issues that I see in the ecosystem and how we could solve them. So basically, I've been using this phone. I'm not sure if it can be easily seen, maybe, which is the Fury-Labs Fury, which is not Fury as in ears, but Fury-OS as in angry. I don't know why they named it that way, by the way. This is the FLX1. It's the rugged version. And I want to compare it to the mainstream. So basically, it's lacking on cameras in comparison to something like Samsung or the mainstream devices that you may be used to. It still has 15 megapixel camera, and it has macro camera that you can just use as a microscope for various things. Me as a Hackerspace member, I have the rugged version, but they have the business kind version that's more of the mainstream friendly. It has 120 hertz refresh rate, which is really good in my opinion, and it will be lacking on performance because like I kind of have my own personal conspiration theory about it. To basically that the manufacturers sell you high-end devices for high prices that. Then they, after a year, because they want you to buy the new model, they will intentionally slow them down or just make their software less efficient so that it feels very sluggish, so that after a year, the device will feel like it's very slow, and you feel like that you bought last year this very expensive device that has this and that performance, and feel like I have to upgrade to have something higher in performance to be able to not have it this sluggish way, which to me is kind of bad way of doing marketing for these smartphones. Like, I want to make the case that you do not need the performance if the software is great. This will always perform really well. It will be always very responsive as long as you keep it updated and there is a community that maintains it there. Where the earliest phone that was Linux and is constantly maintained to this day was Nokia N900, which was released in 2009, if I remember correctly. And now, even after 20 years, it's still getting updates. So if there is a healthy community, this thing will basically get infinite updates. And why I'm talking about performance is because comparing this phone to anything on the mainstream, this will last 3 hours on a single battery charge, in comparison to something like the modern smartphone that you can be lucky to get 1 day of charge, 1 day of charge without charging it intermediately during the day. So to me, not using over-spec chips for smartphones, just focus on functionality. Like this should be a smartphone. I see a lot of like elderly people who have like gaming phones, just to make them, just because they were like available to them and made them feel like it's going to work, but they still have to charge them a lot. This to me feels, in that case, a much better solution because it lasts longer and it can be actually used as a phone. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to use it for compilation gaming or anything like that. And additionally to that, it has replaceable battery that you can just easily replace if you ever need that or need extended battery life. Are you okay there? Thank you. But what I wanted to talk mostly was that, which is something that the Heidelberg I don't think touches on really, is that these devices have a modem in them that is proprietary. Or like this one doesn't. I will get to it shortly. The modem is basically what communicates to the network, and what of these modems just have like it's their own operating system that you do not have access to, and they are wired to the kernel's ring 0. So technically, anyone with access to the modem or operating system can then access your own operating system. So it's kind of like built-in backdoor. For example, a lot of the Linux-based manufacturers who make the phones implement physical switches to try to manage this issue, because like it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to work, and when you are unable to use the network infrastructure, you just have to like jump between Wi-Fi's, which is what the Graphene OS people seem to do a lot of the times, which can work, but it's not very practical, and you do not really need that much security and privacy to get something functional. The change with this is that they are with Fury Labs, they are people from the community, and they have the NDA signed so that they can deploy their own firmware. So if you trust people who are behind Droidian and Debian in general, then they make the firmware for you. They are unable to release it open source because they have the NDA and the manufacturer will prevent them from doing that. But at least you have that kind of security in that there is likely no backdoors as long as you trust Fury Labs with it. And that's kind of the issue that I see in a lot of the Linux phones and for phones in general, that if it has a modem, it can be used for backdoors, which is probably why a bunch of those state sponsors malwares are working so efficiently. I know this sounds very paranoid, but based on what I was able to find, it's really that bad as it sounds. So I'm hoping that we could at least standardize on some kind of modem where we have the control over its operating system, because basically modem is just like baseband, which is what is very dumb microcontroller just does all the communications with the network, and then it has the system that manages the baseband. If we have a modem that has the baseband that's up to date and can communicate with the network, and we have the control over the operating system of the modem and then control over the operating system of the phone, then that's technically what we should be aiming for, because you don't have the issue of security in there. There is already one modem that's currently 4G that is called the Quectel LT25G, which the Pine4 community open source through reverse engineering. So I'm mostly trying to standardize on that, but this one is able to use 5G. So I feel like they are solving a lot of important issues with this form factor and are very misunderstood. So if this is something that concerns you, even like if you use Graphene OS or like are Pixel user, this might be something that you should look into, or like if you are in general just someone who doesn't want your data to be used against you by those companies, maybe look into this. I know that they have, like David Heiselberg tell me that they did not really have a good communications with the community because they compare it to Fairphone, which is at least somewhat sponsoring the developers who work on those devices to make a mainline. But I think that what most people misunderstand that this is not really the classic company in a sense. These are like people from the community who are just trying their best to make something functional, and they should be approached that way because they are not like, they don't have millions to give to developers to be able to work on those devices. What they do is like control over the software that they have under the NDA that they would otherwise give us as an open source, I feel like, based on my conversations with them. I also, so this is for the Linux phones for now. I also want to talk about some Linux smartwatches because I'm sure that Heidelberg showed you a bunch of demos from Asteroid OS and how to make a lot of those work for you, basically, that they have like a smartwatch that has its own Linux kernel working on it. The issue there is that a lot of those smartwatches do not have mainline kernel. They are using what's called a downstream kernel. I know I'm going a lot of into the technicals, but it means basically that kernel is the core that's making the whole smartwatch work. And they are using very outdated version because it's very uneconomical to get those smartwatches to the mainline. So I would like to make the case for you giving a chance to the TIGWatches. There is TIGWatch, that's one that's used by the Asteroid OS people who they are standardizing on, and there is the major development, which is the main problem, which is the main point why I want to talk about it, that they implement mainline for the smartwatch. So it's technically a great platform to just get something that will work as a mainline smartwatch, but it's still, do not expect accuracy with health sensors. It will be a smartwatch, but there is still a long way to go, in my humble opinion, to make smartwatches to function in a way that's non-annoying and actually works reliably. So that's the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, because I see that we are running out of time, I will be in the Base 48 Hackerspace stand to give you some demos of how this technology works and to accept any questions. Thank you for attending.